Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magla Pillay, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Sister Denise, who has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years. Today's topic is entitled Filling the Hole in Your Soul. This series aims to look at individuals and what is going on inside them rather than what they appear to be. It asks you, the viewer, to take an in-depth look into your heart, your psyche, and your mind, and to ask yourselves as to whether you are happy with the quality of your life, whether the person that you are is the person that you indeed wanted to become. We all have problems that we don't talk about. There are things that are plaguing us that not even those who are closest to us know about. This show addresses such imbalances within the soul, and it asks you, the viewer, to see if there can be a solution to your internal problems. To this end, I would like to welcome Sister Denise to the studio this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sister Denise, filling the hole in your soul. I get the distinct impression that there are many who do not even understand that they are walking around with a hole in their soul, as it were.
Well, you wouldn't understand it because you would feel it pre-verbally. So you don't even have words for it. Then the other question is, how big is that hole? You know, the soul itself is so tiny, but maybe the hole is the size of the universe, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to articulate things like this.
Mm. What causes the void inside, that feeling of emptiness? And I know particularly that the feeling of being not unloved but misunderstood is a very dangerous space to be in, and many across the globe feel that.
There are many factors. You know, one of them is just simply the factor of time. And that's something I think we're going to be looking at in another show. But just briefly, the soul is an energy. And when that energy is put into motion, that energy which is life, living, talking, doing, being, that's expenditure of energy. And as you spend your energy, and of course in Brahma Kumari's Raj Yoga, we do subscribe to the concept of reincarnation, which means that the soul passes through a very long period of time, coming again and again into action through the body. So when there has been a lot of time passed, all of that energy is used. So this is one factor. Second factor is the people who don't know how to build their energy. They don't do it, and so that will accelerate the size and the speed at which the whole forms. And so the kinds of things you need to do in order to fill, one of them is spiritual practice, and the other is charity. Because every time you do, you know, what is sometimes called random acts of kindness, you actually restore some of your energy into yourself. So people who are hedonists, people who are simply thinking about what you can get and not putting anything back into society or back into the world, they are walking around with big holes, and they have no tendencies or no intuitions for restoring it. So this is why you have to actually learn about it. It's an education.
Okay, so Sister Denise, it's very normal for a reaction to the hole in your soul, whether one describes it as such or not, to try and fill up the hole with what is available around here. And usually it's things that tend to make your problems worse. Things that harm the body. You try to fill it with something or someone. What do you say to that?
Well, this is one of the reasons why we have a problem of obesity, because people try and fill the hole with food. People try and fill it with drugs, with alcohol. This whole thing of having to put something in your mouth has to do with spiritual emptiness. Then also people try to fill the hole with status symbols, position, because when you receive adulation, when you receive praise, it fills you a little bit, but it's so temporary that you get empty again very quickly. So you have to keep on getting more and more and more and more frequently, and it runs out so quickly that it's hard for you to keep up with it. And the other way that people try to fill is in relationships. So a lot of people's preoccupation with sexuality and sexual fulfillment is totally about filling that unfillable hole in the soul.
So when we do engage in these types of behavior, is it a solution, or does it make the problem worse? Are we just lying to ourselves when we do that?
It's not a solution, because such desires can never be satisfied by trying to fulfill them. You just keep on having to have more and more food, more and more drugs, more and more drink, more and more praise, more and more adulation, more and more, people go for high speed, they go for extreme sports, things which will give you an adrenaline rush. You become an addict on the internet, an addict of movies, all these addictions, because addiction is what? You keep on doing something in order to manage your feelings of emptiness, and it always leads to disappointment. It's never enough, and gradually the quality of your life gets eroded. Your will to do otherwise becomes eroded, and you're totally trapped. So it isn't a solution. There's only one solution, and that solution is to fill from the source, which will give you that thing of which you are getting empty, and that is God. So what is God? Who is God? Where is God? There we have to take a look at that, and how you connect yourself with that source so that you are able to fill. It's rather like your car has run out of petrol. You have to go to the petrol station to fill up, and you have to put the filling device into you and squeeze until you're full. So, yoga is in many ways something like that.
Okay, so Sister Denise, we all tend to engage in temporary fixes just to feel okay when we're going through a dip. But what you just described is a scenario that's much worse than that, isn't that so? Where there is a kind of a vacuum within that we aren't aware of. How does one go about knowing that there is such a vacuum in the first place?
I think you don't really go about knowing it, but circumstances force you to take a look. It could be a big accident, it could be a very severe illness, it could be your family life crashing all around you and falling into pieces. Something major will cause you to have to take a look. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, there'll be people around you who will put the connection to you between what happened and your lifestyle of trying to fill yourself in that way which is addictive. And then you will somehow be forced to deal with it. And any kind of recovery of addictive behavior involves deeply looking at what you're doing, really doing a lot of personal work, stopping the addictive behavior, and really for the rest of your life you need to do a spiritual practice, because To fill that hole takes patience. The hole is large, and you can't just stop acting. You have to keep acting. You have to keep doing things, which means you have to have energy with which to do them. But you need to work on your thinking, you need to work on your lifestyle, and you also need to start doing acts which are of a charitable nature, doing things which are good for others, because that also helps to fill you up.
Sister Denise, there are many people who have reached a point where they feel, I cannot go on for a day longer. I mean, we all know in the various countries from which we come how high the suicide rate is. And there's just one of the extreme reactions to emptiness, or that your life doesn't mean anything. What would you say to somebody who feels, I just cannot go on? I've reached the end. Is it is the feeling real, or not? And if so, if you have such a feeling that this is it for me, I can't take anymore, I can't handle anymore, I don't want to go on, what is your advice to such a person? And there may be thousands watching you who are feeling this way, even though they may not have articulated it to themselves or to the people closest to them.
They also may not be quite at that, final moment. They might be moving towards it. But the thing is, in all of these cases, it's because you think that doing that will end it. Well, it won't. Because your spirit, yourself, is forever. And so when you do violence to yourself and finish your life, that means you don't finish your existence, you just finish that body, and then you have to deal with the consequences of having destroyed your body. And life is sacred, so the consequences are quite severe. And it's not a solution. You cannot avoid. So what you need to do is you need to learn about what a soul is, what life is. And especially you need to learn about karma, you see. Because people who don't know about it, they start going down a road which takes you to that kind of desperate place by continuing to do negative karma. And of course what you need to do is stop doing the negative karma and start doing positive karma. And there's many types of positive karma which are going to give you the energy to be able to face what you have to face. The first thing you need to do is to consider yourself to be a soul, not a body. And that also means consider that you're an actor and you're in a scene, and that scene arises, persists, and finishes. But finishing your body does not finish the situation. Because when you're in a situation which is very painful, it means that on some level you're being tested, on some level you're paying karma. And so if you have a debt, the way to handle it is not to get further in debt. It is to do whatever you have to do to reduce the debt. So people need to know that the situation they're in is all about being in debt. And karmic debt. I mean, you may be in financial debt as well. And so what does a person do to get into financial debt? Some of it has to do with mismanagement. Some of it has to do with just not understanding how things work. And of course there are circumstances in this world where people are in really bad situations because of war, because of bandits, because of something that is outside their hands, you see. And there you really need to turn to God. Because when you turn to God sincerely and honestly, you get help, you see. And then you also have to start doing things which are beneficial. You see, for example, there's a spiritual law which says that if you serve your fellow man. You cannot die of starvation. Die of something else. You know, but
That's beautiful.
yeah. And so the thing is that people who don't really look at their qualities, don't really consider that their qualities are gifts, do not share those, they don't create karmic credit. They just create debit. And so their situation gets worse and worse, and the hole in the soul gets bigger and bigger. And so it's very important to actually have an education about these things, because they won't teach you in your schools. The media doesn't talk about this hardly. You're hard put to it to find this kind of information in your culture. And I think this is why we engage in this kind of programming, so that some of these ideas can get out to people and they can start applying them and actually turning their lives around.
It is quite shocking that that which you're sharing is not more widely known, because it's almost like primary knowledge of the self. It's in any case, I do find that quite shocking. So Denise, so if you said you start with a redefining your identity, then you create a relationship with God, then serve your fellow men. As one is going through all of that, how do you cope with your feelings? Because the pain of what we're talking about is excruciating. It's invisible but real pain.
Yeah, but you have to be able to check your thinking.
Okay.
And you have to start doing that, because your pain is a direct result of your thinking. And so you have to look and see how your thoughts, and just really observe. You have a thought, which is a pain-producing thought. It immediately produces pain. You have the option to not produce that thought. You can produce a different thought. It's a matter of patience. It's a matter of practice. Because many people feel so flooded with negative thoughts that they don't get that they made those thoughts.
Okay, can I interrupt you there? A very large percentage of one's thoughts are involuntary. There's thoughts that you think consciously. You could be sitting here minding your own business, and there your inner critic would say that if you weren't such a stupid idiot, you wouldn't find yourself in such dire financial straits.
You can't say that's involuntary.
But
voluntary.
Denise, it comes from somewhere.
Okay, where does it come from? It comes from your sanskaras.
Which is you defined in the past as being your personality traits.
Your personality traits. Okay, your subconscious, but you have to realize that you put it there in the first place. It doesn't come by itself.
That's fine. You put it there at some point in the past, so now it's working against you. How do you offset that thought?
You tell it, sit down, be quiet.
Is that not suppression?
It's discipline.
It's discipline.
Yeah. You have to tell your mind, no, don't go there.
Okay.
See.
So you quash it?
Well, you have to tell it to behave, you know.
Yeah.
It is discipline. It is, you have within yourself, you have certain rights within the inner world. And part of your rights are to decide, you know, what thoughts are going to be entertained. You know, the thought will arise and present itself for being, you know, received, and you say, no, sorry, out, don't want you.
Okay, so you have to be then internally directed to be able to be aware that there's a thought emerging, and you either buy it or you don't buy it.
The thing is this, when you are externally oriented, you don't notice what you're doing on the inside. And then you say, well, I didn't do it, which is not true. You did do it, but you were not paying attention, you see. So this is why I call it discipline. You have to sit with yourself and explain to yourself, no, all these feelings that I'm feeling are optional. They can only occur if I permit them.
My feelings are optional. May I ask you something else? Do you think you are your thoughts, you are your feelings?
No, you have them.
Aha. So they're not you.
They're not you.
They're who you chose to be at that point.
No, they're not. Thoughts are productions.
And so are feelings.
Feelings are productions.
So you can reproduce?
You can produce different ones.
Okay.
You know, it's like a garden, you know. Whatever seeds you plant in your garden, those are the fruits you get. And so in many cases, thoughts are the seeds. But in many cases also, they are the fruits. Because you have a whole life on the level of the mind. And you can produce thoughts which produce other thoughts. You know, because the mind tends to operate on the basis of associations. But you can intervene at any point and say, okay, stop going down there, go over here. And this is the function of what we call the buddhi, or the intellect, you see, which is the will. And the problem for most people is their will hardly operates, you see. And so part of meditation is to actually increase the power of the will. You decide to think positively, and then you say, oh, well, I can't. What does that mean? When you say I can't, it means I'm too weak to be able to. So if you are admitting to yourself, I'm too weak to think positive thoughts, then exercise your will and get some strength into it, you see. This is where I go back to the idea of discipline.
Thoughts are cyclical, aren't they, as are feelings?
Well, they are. A thought arises. Where does it come from? It comes from your subconscious. Your subconscious comes from your past actions. So if you want to intervene and enter into that cycle and change its direction, there you can do that at any point, but it is the will, the intellect. So you have the mind, you have the intellect, you have the sanskaras. So the sanskaras are the consequences of your past actions. They feed your mind with thoughts that are related to those past actions. Those thoughts have a tendency to become words and actions, but they cannot become real until you allow them. And so this part of your consciousness which says yes or no, do it, don't do it, this is right, this is wrong, this is the part that gets strengthened in the process of Raj Yoga meditation. And so that your whole thing is to strengthen the will. But there's no point in having an antagonistic relationship with your mind, you see, because that will cause serious trouble.
Sister Denise, give us an example of what you mean by having an antagonistic relationship with the mind. What does that mean?
You're fighting, all the time fighting.
So you are fighting, you speaking in an ugly way to yourself.
It's tremendous internal conflict. You have a desire going this way, and then you say, no, you can't do that. Well, I want to do that. No. It's like a domestic violence on the inside of your head.
Okay.
Horrible.
Yes, horrible.
And so you have to be very nice to your mind. You have to understand that it is there for you. If it is producing thoughts that you don't like, then you have to work with it to go into your subconscious where the thoughts came out from in the first place. And then you have to look at your actions, you see. Because if you are doing actions that are ugly, then you have to take responsibility for that. And you have to stop. See, it's no use just, oh, I did this horrible thing, I feel guilty, and carry on doing it. That's no use. You have to stop. No use punishing yourself. That's hardly worth doing. You tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to do that. But non-violently. You know, some people are very violent towards themselves, and that is also part of the process that leads to suicide, you know, because it's the most extreme violence against yourself. You know?
Okay, Sister Denise, unfortunately, I think we have to say goodbye to you right now. This has been a riveting subject, and I do hope that those who are listening were able to see the depth and wisdom of what you've been sharing, and more specifically, to be able to apply it into their lives. So thank you very much for today's chat. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've been taking notes. This has been an extremely thought-provoking half an hour. Sister Denise shared on a very important yet ignored subject, and what is required of you if you resonate with this topic is to pause, take a look inside yourself and ask yourself, is there a hole in your soul? You see, at the end of the day, only you and no one else is responsible for you. And I think the message that was shared is very deep and relevant to practically every single one of us on the planet. And I think the deepest message that Sister Denise shared was how to manage the mind, and also how not to have an antagonistic relationship internally. So message was very deep, and I hope you will take some time and digest it and take that which you need out of this talk so that it could work for you. Thank you so much, Sister Denise, for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.